state, probably beyond Iowa. So welcome to Retail Ready, the Retail Ready Summit. This is our third year of offering the Retail Ready Summit. And as a apparel merchandising and design program at Iowa State, we really like to pride ourselves in being at the forefront of what's going on in the retail industry, because most all of our students are employed in or touched by, interact with the retail industry in some way, shape, or form. So retailing is huge. It's one of the largest employers in the United States. It's a major aspect of economic development. So it's really important for us to understand what's making retail tick and what the latest trends are and what we should be aware of. Maybe I did not introduce myself. I'm Dr. Linda Neem. I'm the interim department chair for apparel events and hospitality management. And my teaching and research is in the area of retailing and entrepreneurship. So this whole topic of Retail Ready is very close and near and dear to my heart. And I have all of my merchandising faculty team members here today. They'll be introducing themselves in different stages throughout the program. So today our theme is leveraging AI, working smarter in retail. I'm always about working smarter, not harder. I think we all are always constantly seeking for ways to do that. And with all of the huge and, pervasive changes that we have seen in the market environment, in the global environment, there just are lots of things going on that we have to balance and juggle all of these balls in the air at the same time. So if AI can help us to do that in a more effective way, all the better. But I think we're all kind of at a point where we're trying to figure it all out, because it's almost like drinking from a fire hose, that it's like, AI's here. Oh my gosh, what do I do? They can do so much. Is this ethical to do this? Whatever the application is. So there are many questions surrounding AI. So we hope today to bring some clarity to AI in the retail environment and demystify some of the questions that are swimming around in everyone's head, and just really have all of our participants leave here with an informed, knowledge base to move forward in whatever way that you interact with the retail industry. So students, we have many students here today. This is really a prime opportunity for you to learn from industry. And I think that you will really enjoy the day. So I hope that you participate in as much of our 3 sessions as possible. I'll introduce the first session here in just a moment. I will call one of our great graduate students, Joyita Sakar, up, and she's going to talk a little bit about AI, which is the focus of her research interests. Joyita.
Thank you so much, Professor. Hi, I'm Joyita, and talking about working smarter. The businesses, the students, any individual is leveraging AI in so many different ways. If we, sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. If we talk about how businesses are doing that, they're working smarter on making things automated. They don't have to keep doing the monotonous job anymore. You have AI for that. For example, the first function they would be using it for is marketing. Generating content, generating text-based content is so tedious. You have to spend hours, days to perfect everything. Now you have tools like ChatGPT, you have tools like Synthesia.io, which will actually create a video, a training module from the text you have just created in somewhere else. So why to spend so much time there, especially when you don't have so many helpers? Like the businesses we're talking about, small businesses or the large businesses, you have a very lean team. To make the best out of it, I guess leveraging AI is the way. So let's hear out what our speakers has to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyita.
Thank you. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'll put it on.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. So we've kind of have laid the context for you for today. And as Joyita alluded to, the fact that AI can be impactful for any kind of organization, size, industry sector. We're looking just at the retail sector today, and we're going to start out with the big picture, looking at a large retail fashion related firm. We're then going to hear from a business consultant perspective because we look to them for what we should be doing. So that will be a really interesting perspective that many of you maybe aren't used to hearing from. So we'll be really anxious to hear from Josh as well. And then we have a panel of entrepreneurs that are using AI in some way, shape, or form in their business to make their performance, make them perform better. And so that will be another really great piece of what we're looking at today as well. So we will introduce all of these participants as we get to their segment of the program. There were flyers out there with the program if you needed one of those. And I'm trusting that everybody has signed in and scanned and done all the things that you need to do to be official today. Okay, so without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, our keynote speaker. I have to admit, this is kind of like a full circle moment in my life. So I would like to introduce Tyler Beldolid, and Tyler is our keynote speaker, and he works for Abercrombie & Fitch. He's worked for a number of other fashion and retail companies. I know he'll briefly talk about that. But Tyler is a 2009 graduate from our AMD program, and he currently is the Senior Director of Merchandising for Abercrombie & Fitch in Columbus, Ohio. So at any rate, I'm really anxious to hear Tyler's presentation. I'm very proud of him as well. So we will hear what Abercrombie is doing. And I think he's also just going to kind of give us how he puts his finger on the pulse of what's going on regarding AI in both the merchandising and design product development realms within fashion related businesses. So Tyler, I'll turn the floor over to you. Yeah, I think you got to put that guy on someplace.
Figure it out as it's quick.
Oh. Yeah, do you want to advance your own?
All right.
Okay. Here we go. Lots of stuff to hold.
A lot of technology up here.
Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So I think I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to Dr. Neem for the invitation. I think it's always good to get back to Iowa State and just see what has changed. I think graduating in 2009 was a very long time ago. You don't need to do the math. I'm quite old. So after school, I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and really started at Land's End. And that was a chance for me to be able to be in the fashion industry, but stay in the Midwest while all my family was still back in Iowa. I was able to travel back and forth. I think as I moved through, I then moved to Dallas, Texas, and was able to work for Fossil, working on watches, jewelry, handbags. Was there for a few years and then landed at Abercrombie & Fitch, where I'm at today. So I've been there for 8 years. I think the benefit of hopping around and being at all these different companies is at the end of the day, once you build that base merchandising skill set, you can apply it to many different items within the market. So I think that's kind of the background of how I got to where I am today. But hopefully, you'll walk away from today understanding a little more about Abercrombie & Fitch and how we're using AI. So I just want to give a big disclaimer as we get into this. This is one person's point of view, one company's point of view. I think we are on the very beginning of all of this AI journey, especially within the retail industry. So I think there will be questions. If you have questions during it, feel free to ask them. We don't have to wait until the end, and we'll get into it. So, I don't know how to do a video on this. I have to double click it. So I'm going to start off with a quick video just to kind of set the land of where we're at.
And then we'll ring around at. See, that's what I said. Case that she thought it was about. Yeah. But I've never heard around. I've never really said. I've only seen it. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Why was NBC? Yeah, I agree around. I don't know what you're missing. NBC, GE. I mean. Well, Allison should know. What internet is the massive computer age, the one that's becoming really big now. What do you mean that's big? What do you want? Like mail? No, a lot of people use it and communicate, and I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and printers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
So that was from 1994, 30 years ago. I think if you think about what the internet has done to just how we live everyday life, whether it's buying groceries, buying cars, shopping. It's interesting to look back and see that, at that point in time, they had no clue what was to come. I look at that and I think this is where we are kind of with AI right now. Right? We'll probably look back even 5 years from now and say, look at what has changed in a very big shifting way. So the first thing I want to talk about is ChatGPT. I'm sure everybody has heard of ChatGPT. I'm sure a lot of people are using it. I think when you look at what this has done, and in my opinion, this is kind of what put AI back into the forefront of just public. Now, when you look at how fast it was adopted is one of the key points. So released in November 30th of 2022, 100 million users within 2 months. I think when you look at the chart to the right, I mean, no one comes close to how fast people started to use that. I think when you also look at another comparison with Netflix launching in 1999, I mean, it took them almost 4 years to get to just 1 million, right? So the rate at which people have adopted this is extremely fast. I think that tells me a couple of things. One, I don't think AI is just a flash in the pan, going to be gone. We don't need to worry about it. I think it's here to stay, and I think it'll look very different 10 years from now than it does right now. So I think it's a good just kind of level set point to understand where we are today. So I'd say the big thing that ChatGPT did was really started to get generative AI out there. AI has been around for a very long time, but I think this new form, this is already being used in fashion, right? So a couple examples, you have the Moncler show that they did, the collaboration with Adidas, and they kind of built these futuristic, outerwear looks all through AI. You have the Casablanca show. I mean, they built a whole campaign of just this resort, very dreamy, all using AI. You then have another component of how kind of generative AI had seeped into really the meme world, right? With the Pope wearing the puffer, obviously AI generated, and then really the Balenciaga Harry Potter. So there's a lot of different aspects of how this will continue to be put in place, and we'll talk about it at the end of just some of the risks that could potentially take place based on how this is unfolding. So what I wanted to get into is really how are we using AI at ANF? So I want to set the highest level that we are not seeing this as a way to replace what we're doing. We see it as a tool alongside what we're doing. And I'll talk about it in a couple different ways. But at the end of the day, there's three kind of main points that we're looking at. The first being product. We're a product company. Everything is based on starting with product. So we're looking at it from a trend prediction, design inspiration, the big piece of inventory optimization, which some of these we'll dig into a little bit later. Voice is the second piece. So how is the customer responding to the brand? How are we using it, again, for efficiency to do some of the daily tasks that we need to get done, but that the customer is really connecting with? And the last would really be experience. How is the customer experiencing our brand? So we'll talk more about this, but real-time personalization, how they're searching the website. At the end of the day, it's how do we create less friction for the customer as they're shopping with brands? So before we get into it, I'm going to give just a high-level overview of how product development for us works. And I probably could have put a 50-page deck together and never touched on all the different points. But what we want to kind of talk about is first trend analysis. So we really start the season digging into the customer. Everything starts and begins with the customer. We want to understand kind of where their mindset is. So TikTok is a huge piece of this. I think no one should be surprised by that. When you really see how fast TikTok has grown, but also just how fast trends are driven off of TikTok. So we're looking at it from a creator standpoint. We're looking at it from what's virally trending. We're looking at from how outfitting is happening. A lot of different pieces come from that. I'd say the other big thing that we do is really customer immersion. So this gives us a chance to get directly with the customer, to hear the words out of their mouth, what they're looking for. I recently did a customer immersion in Detroit, and it was for the Hollister brand. So it was with me kind of just hanging out with a bunch of high school kids. It was very eye-opening to see kind of what high school looks like now versus what it was when I was in high school. I think the one thing that really shocked me, we were talking about, how do you meet new people, boyfriends, girlfriends, and the one thing he had said to me was we don't text. Texting is for old people. And in my mind, it was okay, texting is just the normal way of communicating. I was so what do you use? And unanimously, they all said Snapchat. It would be weird if I asked somebody for their number. I would just ask for their code, and that's the only way we communicate. So it's things like that, talking to the customer and really understanding directly from them, how are they living their life? I think in addition to that, focus groups is another big piece of what we do. So, we're getting in front of customers, we're understanding how they're shopping, what brands they're shopping. We've done closet raids to understand what's currently in the closet. All of this, again, just gives us a better rounded point of view of our direct customer. Second piece is really trend research. So what are the new buzzy brands that are popping up? Who do we need to keep an eye on of just what's happening in the larger space? And it's not that we're looking at them to copy. It's like we're looking at them because that's what the customer is looking at. And we need to stay relevant with the customer if they're seeing all of this newness. Runway, still important. It remains important. It will always be important, but I think it's definitely shifted and become more commercialized. I think even back when I was in school, it was very avant-garde, things you would not wear, on a day-to-day basis. I think it's really changed. And I think streetwear helped to kind of like shift that a little bit. And it will continue to evolve from that way. I think macro trends is always an input into what we're doing. We need to follow what's happening in the broader base. Festivals is a huge one that we look at. And, the red flag and something you have to watch out with festivals is really, the way someone dresses when they go to a festival is not how they always dress, right? You're not always going to wear that to the office, to school. So you have to watch what trends are coming through there because they may be specific to what's happening at the moment. Shopping trips is another big piece. We need to understand globally what's happening out in the market and making sure that we're staying ahead and staying on top of any trends that may be coming down the pipeline. And then the last piece would really be cultural hype. So F1 has been a huge piece of the men's business that has really started to take off. I think just the general openness and how many people are amped up about it. It happened a few years back with NBA, sports, and now it's just kind of evolving. And I think you can't deny the Taylor Swift impact to NFL, whether you like it or don't like it, it's happening. So we need to make sure that we're also aware of all of those things around it. The second piece and what would go on to next would really be the strategy piece. So while design is kind of, getting all of the preseason stuff ready to go, from a merchant standpoint, we're really hindsighting the last season. What happened in the business? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? And I'll tell you, and I tell a lot of people when I'm interviewing, if you're someone that has to be 100% right all the time, this is going to be a tough industry for you. I'm never right. I've either bought too much, I didn't buy enough, and that's just the way that it goes, and that's okay. And you've got to really understand what are the things that you can control, and then what are things that you just need to pivot that are out of your control. The next piece would really be brand strategy. Where are we trying to go as a brand? We need to stay cohesive. We need to all come out into the market in one viewpoint. And aligning on that all up front out in season allows all the teams to execute successfully to that. Third piece would be financial targets. We're a publicly traded company. We're there to drive the business. So what are we looking to do in that upcoming season? Coming out of that meeting, we really then build a line list, and we'll build that out and pass that to design to really build and say, okay, for next season, I need X many styles, I need this many colors. But what we also want to do is you leave open-ended and say, okay, to design, what are you guys seeing out there? What's happening? How are we moving? So design really then kind of takes it and starts sketching and building into it. We then meet and we will have assortment reviews to get sign off to make sure everybody's bought into the assortments. Oops, I'm clicking on random things. And then focus group is another checkpoint here. So we might pressure test a brand new idea, a brand new trend long before we'll take it to market to make sure that, that accuracy rate can increase. And then the last piece, which we won't really get into today, is really on the production side. So how are the tech packs created? How are we sampling? How are we making sure that every garment is perfect before we go into production on it? There we go. I'm going to get it by the end of this, I promise. Nope. So next I want to talk about AI in the design process. So I think from just what has happened with AI, I think there's a notion out there that now everyone is just kind of punching things into a computer, garments are being spit out, and we're producing them. That is the 100% opposite truth of what is actually happening. At Abercrombie, we're really experimenting with AI, as a way to kind of help the design process along and look for efficiencies and really just look for, how can we free up more of the designer's time to focus on other things that is being spent right now in just process. I think it offers the design team, really a way to get us internal assets. None of this, that we create today is ever really coming out in front of the customer. It's for us to build concepts, themes, and how do we want to sell the story as we're working through the process. I think the other big piece here is efficiency, right? Every company is looking for how can we be more efficient. That's a huge win of what we've uncovered so far in it, and that what's really helped us to kind of use AI and learn and continue to iterate in the general process. So here are a few ways that we've started to really use it within products. So, oh my God, this is going off the rails. There we go. Yeah, maybe. Just so that I don't destroy the whole thing. Perfect. So generative AI and product, and this is what we're kind of looking at. So mood imagery is a huge piece of what we're using it for. Again, internally, as we're building out concepts for a season, as we're looking for new ways to push these stories, this has been an amazing tool to help us really build that out. New idea visualization. How are we continuing to evolve on the ideas that we know today are great in the business, and how are we making them feel new and fresh as we go forward? Photorealistic base sketch generation. So if you look at the image with the taxi and the Christmas tree, that was a few images of taxis, a New York City shot, and a car with a Christmas tree on the top of it. It then generated what looks to be a real picture of a cab in New York with a tree on it. The last piece, which we haven't really gone down the path too far on, has been graphic and pattern artwork generation. We have an amazing, talented group of graphic designers that a lot of them are hand painting, drawing, and we will not put technology in front of that and lose that creative component. So that will remain. And that may be something, in the future we look at, but right now that's not where we're focused as far as generative AI. So mood imagery. So you can see on the right, this was created via AI. So what we do is we really look at what are we trying to tell the story for the season, and how do we get images that tie back to that? So in this example, high-end fashion shoot, 17-year-old models, different garments, soft colors, minimalism. This is an area that has been huge for design as they're looking at how am I selling my idea to everyone else, and how am I getting everybody on board? You can also reference different art styles, eras. You could say, I want them to be in a cabin with snow in the background if we're talking about holiday. There's different ways that you can tweak this to get what you want. I'd say at the end of the day, the first result that you get back is not perfect. You have to iterate over and over and over again, which is totally fine. And I think that's where everybody's excited about, what's to come in the future for generative AI. Because as it starts to learn and pick up, and especially for a brand, when you have a specific point of view and a specific customer, can it start to pick up on some of this stuff so that the outputs get a lot stronger than, sitting there and kind of pushing over and over again? Next piece is idea visualization. So we might have an amazing fabric that we developed, and it's in a style, and it's an amazing style. And we want to think about how much more could we do with this idea. This is an example of us taking a short in a fabric and saying we want to look at that pattern across multiple garments. We've then obviously added in some more framework around how we want it to come back out as far as neutrals, hidden hands, ambient lighting, and how are we building this out, and then it produced to the right. So again, this is all just feeding into, as we're pre-season developing and as we're trying to build these stories, how are we getting this to help aid us in that and push out new ideas to look at? So as we look to the future, I think these are a lot of the questions that everyone has on their mind, myself included, right? Could AI curate the most relevant social media content? Right now, it's the team scrolling through, looking. Is there a way that an AI could create that and push back, these are the most exciting things that are happening in your target market? These are different things that can just speed up and take away a lot of the day-to-day work that's happening right now. Could it be more predictive of macro trends and when they're peaking and when they're not? And I think we'll talk about it at the end of just where there's some risk to this. But I think this is a huge piece of how do we start to just shape what we want the information to come back as. Could it be predictive of cultural hype? Could it start to feed on, could we have known about Taylor Swift in the NFL long before that actually happened? Are there ways to start to shape and get that? And I think that's what's the most exciting part as we start to look at the trend component of what's going on. From a strategy standpoint, we're starting to look into some of this as well, but, how can we make AI make the hindsighting process a much more streamlined process? Right now, we're digging through reports, we're pulling everything. How do we build the AI to just say, I want to know what the bestseller was in the third week of March in 2021? What is that? And how can I get to that quickly? So I think those are the things that I think can also speed the business along and make sure that from a strategy standpoint, we're just as efficient with the work that's going on. From a design and product evaluation, again, how do we train it to keep understanding our customer, understanding our design language, understanding our point of view of what we're trying to get to? Because all of this would then just make that process of working with the AI so much smoother. Instead of having to go through 5, 6, 7 rounds, we'd be able to quickly start to move through some of this. Another big thing that is on everyone's mind, can AI be built to test assortments in? Can it understand the customer's behaviors, our direct customer? And could that be a way to pressure test these ideas instead of getting out there and buying small quantities and going as fast as we can? So another efficiency tool that I think is on everyone's minds as far as we look to the future of what we want to do. And then production, I think this will be the easiest one to get to, but how do we just start to automate a lot of the tech pack details? It creates more efficiency, but it also creates accuracy. And that's something that is huge as you're working in production and communicating back and forth with a vendor. There could be language barriers, there's definitely time barriers. So how do you remove anything that could go wrong in that process and really make sure that you've got a clear point of view on what you're trying to produce? The next piece of thing that I'll get into is really inventory optimization. So currently, we use demand forecasting, right? Technology is there and it's not as great as it could be, but it's there. So this is just kind of a high level view of how it looks today, right? I want to go out and I want to buy 10,000 units. I've got a plan that I need to hit this many. I need this many units by region. How is it being shipped from the factory? That all goes into the plan. Then it would be the forecast. Okay, of those 7,000 units that I bought, I need to ship those between the stores and I need to ship them between DTC. Then it breaks it down even further. Of those store units, and I just found out Jordan Creek A&F is no longer there, RIP. I used to work in that store when I was in college. But if it was, we would take those units and it would go, but then it would break it down into sizing, right? And so each one of these right now is they're fed and they talk to each other, but it's a different step in the process. So how do we condense that down and how do we really get all the data into one spot and feeding one tool? So a couple of things. Right now, what it uses is really historical sales data, right? It looks market trends and it kind of spits out, this is what we think the demand is going to be based on what it's historically been, which has been great for right now. I think as we look to the future, what we're really trying to understand is, how do we start to factor in some additional pieces via AI that can make those outputs of demand even 100 times better, right? So weather, how do we understand what's going on with weather by region to make sure that we're getting the inventory placed in the correct locations? How does it understand events, right? Tax-free is a huge one for the apparel industry. How does it know when those are happening, where those are moving by state? Like it looks different every year. So how does it start to pick up on some of the stuff that's happening? Social media trends, how is that going to influence the demand of a product? The more inputs that you can have in all the different data points, the output's going to be so much stronger. And then price points, promos, what we look at every year is say, okay, last year at Black Friday, we knew we were at X% off. How does it start to factor some of that in if I now say, actually, I want to be full price? Well, that's going to look very different than what the demand would be if I was half off the entire store. So a lot of this stuff, I think, as you start to build in more parameters around it, it does a couple of things. I think it'll continue to improve as it spits out a demand forecast and you look at that and you kind of understand, yes, no, tweak it and go, but it'll start to learn and start to pick up on the things that we're changing. I think at the end of the day, what this will do is really reduce markdowns, right? So my goal is to have as few markdowns out there as possible. If we're marking down something heavy, it means I got my job wrong. I missed the trend, I bought too much. And the more bad product and the units that I have in bad product means the less of the good that I have. Out of stocks is another huge piece of what this is really going to help. And it's frustrating when you go to a site and you see an amazing shirt that you want, and then you go in and there's no sizing available, right? So all of that is tied back into, we've got to be able to forecast correctly where we want the inventory to make sure that it's working for us. So product descriptions is another area that we're looking at. So right now it's a very manual process, right? The merchant team who knows the assortment in and out is kind of using that and saying, okay, this is a pant, this is white, it has this, right? It's very manual, which leaves a room to, have a lot of errors if someone accidentally clicked something wrong. So that's the way it's going through right now. And I think what we're excited about is how do we use AI to generate that? So in the example, you can see there's a pant, and in the current state, maybe not all the attributes were filled out. We may have, had a busy meeting that week and, we didn't have time to get back in there and put that in. This is important because this is also feeding the sales data that we're getting. If I want to look at any given time, how much are, white jeans as a percent of my business, regardless of fit, regardless of location, this is what's feeding that. And if someone, incorrectly attributed something and, instead of white, they put gray, that's going to throw everything off. So there's a huge time saver and accuracy component there. I think when you look to the right, and if we started to have AI really drive it, one, the accuracy would be much better. And two, it can study the image and really understand, are there other things on this image that I should be putting in here? That will also help as someone's coming to the website and searching. That helps from an end use occasion standpoint. So it kind of fills in a lot of the voids that maybe someone manually doing it wouldn't be able to get to in the whole time. I think at the end of the day, similar to all other AI, it still needs proofreading, right? Until we start to get to a better spot where this really understands what we're telling it, you'll always have to proofread everything that you're going into. As a company, the other big piece of what we're looking at is really, we're testing and learning the idea of an AI stylist. So, as the customer comes to the website and they navigate the website and they're trying to understand, what they're looking for in a speedy time. Yes, there are always the drop downs and the sorts, and you can take your time and go through there and select everything, but nobody wants to do that, right? You come to the website and you type in, black jacket. Come in and it pulls up all the black jackets on the website. What we're trying to understand is how do we use AI to really feed that loop feedback back, right? So coming into the website and searching, what can I wear to a wedding in Nashville in the summer? The AI can then also understand, okay, the weather in the summer in Nashville is this, so you should probably look at linen. It can start to have more of a back and forth, but then as it's spitting results back out, you can interact with it the same way you would as you went into a store. Right, you're not going into a store and just looking at the customer service person and saying black jacket, right? You start to explain what's your end use, what are you using it for? So I think the more that we can tailor the experience on the website to the customer, the more live data we can give back to them, the easier the shopping experience will be. And that will just allow us to communicate easier and allow the customer to get what they need in a shorter time. The other big piece here would be customer feedback. So right now, as we look at how the customer is leaving reviews on the website, we spend a lot of time kind of going through just on the website and reading them, right? And I'm looking at it from a merchandising standpoint because it allows me to understand directly from the customer good things, but then also bad things, right? Is the fit off? Did the pockets fall apart? Did the zipper break? All things that like I would want to know about the product that are happening in real time. I think the benefit is just with user-generated content, we've now added imagery, right? So I can see how it fits someone. I can see what it looks like in person. I think what we're looking to do is really sum all of that feedback up and kind of give me the high-level takeaways, right? And this isn't something new, right? Amazon's doing it right now, especially if you are a Prime member and you go down to the reviews, and it calls out that it's AI generated, right? And it's just summing up everything. And now obviously they have way more reviews than 400 that we'll have on a garment, but the end result is the same. But I think the difference is we're looking at it for an internal purpose versus an external purpose, more so for a tool for the team to make sure that we can quickly get to all this feedback and implement it as fast as we can. So the next thing wanted to get into was really potential risks of AI in retail. This is from my viewpoint, from what I've seen, from what I've learned. This could also change very drastically as the next years unfold and as we start to learn more. So I think the first one being really customer response. We need to understand how the customer is going to perceive AI. How involved do they want it? I think a great example of this was, Levi's came out and said that they were going to start using AI-generated models for diversity, right? And I think what they were going after was the right sense of like, hey, I cannot shoot every single size and every single garment on the site and be able to do that affordably, right? I think the pushback was, why are you using it for diversity purposes, right? We've made so much progress in diversity. Now we're going to take a step back because we're going to start using AI-generated models to do that. So they had to then re-release another press release of like, hey, we're not replacing all the models, because I think the fear was, this is just going to replace paying for models or having photo shoots, which, they weren't looking at it in that sense, but that's how it was taken. So you have to understand that there's a high sense of just the customer looking at this and they want to know how it's being used. The second piece is fashion becomes homogenous, right? As we talked about in some of the design pieces, if everybody's looking at the same stuff and the AI is pulling all from the exact same standpoint, how do we stop the entire market from looking the exact same, right? Everyone's going after trends, everyone's going after what's working. I think from an Abercrombie standpoint, that's why we're seeing this as a tool for really just idea generation, not for designing. Because if it goes down the path of using it for designing, then yes, this will be a point that will be hard. But I think as long as we continue to use it as a tool to aid in the process and really just get new ideas generated and going, we still follow the same design process that we have now of sketching out everything, from an assortment down to the garment details. None of that is being used in AI, and it won't for this foreseeable future from an Abercrombie standpoint. The next piece is really data and privacy concerns, right? I think the big thing is how and where is the data coming from? When you talk about something like ChatGPT, where it's just open sourcing anything that's on the internet, right? That looks very different than if you've created your own AI within the company that's pulling from your data. The other piece here is, from all the different companies that, we've talked to as we've started to get into this, I think that's the number one question, is just how is the data sourced? And is it open? Is it closed? Is there a risk that this is going to get out into a bigger way? And at the end of the day, data is still the king of the industry, right? We want to know about the customer. We want to know their shopping habits, but you have to do it in a way that the customer trusts you, and you can't go back on that. The last piece is really self-governing and ethics. So up until this point, right, there's no government that is saying you cannot use AI for this, you can use AI for this. That then leads, retailers to have to self-govern. In our case, before we got into any of the AI space, there was a very long review with legal and just said like, okay, we will not use it for XXX. We will not use other brands' names. We will not do any of this. And it was setting the framework internally so that the company knew how to work within it. Because it's such a new process, there are a lot of questions as the teams start to use it, which is completely normal. But we need the retailers and we need the brands and we need everyone to really make sure that they're staying on top of this. because, right now it could spiral. And I think that's why, we've put so much pressure on making sure we've got the guidelines internally to make sure that we control it. So wrapping it all up, in summary, I think, very beginning of implementation of AI in retail. I think if you think about it right now, the technology is the worst it's ever going to be. It's only going to continue to iterate and get stronger and get better. And that is a great point to be at right now. I think, from just what's been put out into the news space, in my opinion, I think the hype is far ahead of the use cases and what we're getting out of it right now, right? And which is totally fine, right? That brings excitement to it. That allows people to focus on it. And I think, will it get caught up? 100% it will. I think there's no doubt that eventually the use cases will be amazing coming out of this. Back to the data point, AI is only as good as the data that's putting in. You really have to have the infrastructure in place to do this. And so we've spent a lot of time consolidating all the different points across the company of where the data is coming from, right? We need it to come from one centralized source. And that's a huge component of how we get this to work in the right way. I think retail will benefit from the implementation. It will be based on efficiency and streamlined processes. I think, in my opinion, it will not be a replacement of jobs. I think you have to have a human component of it, and you have to be able to not lose that creativity, especially in the retail space. So in my mind, it will continue to be through process and efficiency. I think AI should be seen as a tool. That's kind of the end of it. It should not replace. And the customer will also benefit in the long run, right? More personalization, easier shopping experience, less friction, all things that every retailer is trying to do right now. And then continuing to focus on companies really needing to implement guidelines for AI use until, long term, there's more guidelines in place for the total market. And with that, thank you, and happy to take any questions.
We need to take a mic around, or what do you think the best way of doing this?
If you want to just kind of rephrase what the question was, so we
Mhm. Anyone's welcome. Hi.
Yeah, I already have any sort of answer along the way. Oh,
That's good.
yeah. Where that is. And then like how that then influences the machine vision. So for example, like, you're talking about like you're looking at getting it from centralized point in the, but eventually like, it might go, it's like open source or closed, right?
Yep.
Let me get you a question. Question is like thinking about the influences on what that data would be, like political, social influences that could then shape things without intent, without people actually knowing it's happening. So do you have any thoughts? You already kind of mentioned this. Do you have thoughts on like the potential for that, or like are you thinking about that as like a potential, political things that they're trying to influence? That's weird.
It's a long question, so I don't know if I can repeat all of that, but I think the general question was, is there a concern for what could become of AI? You mentioned the political space, but really in general. Number one, I'm not an expert in this space, right? So there's probably other people in this room that could give you better guidance. But I think some of the examples that I showed, right, like the Pope in a puffer, right? To some people, that could have been seen as like that as a real image, right? And there's no way to know, right? So there will always be that chance that there are bad actors taking some of this AI and working into it. And I think that's why eventually we'll get to a point where there's going to have to be more rules and regulations around it. Do AI images need to be watermarked? Are there ways that we can start to put some of this stuff out there that can control that? Because right now, it is very self-dependent on who's using it, which can be a scary spot. But I think that's why really in the retail space, you've got to be able to, within your own company, build those parameters and guidelines to make sure that everyone's following the same rule. Yeah. So the question was, how far out do I think we are from that regulation? Very far. I think there's too many, and you might have a better point of view on this, but in my opinion, there's too many variables and too many end use cases right now, right? And we're seeing just like kind of rapid fire, all these different things that are coming out. And I think it'll look different depending on industry as well, right? Like I'm coming at it from a retail point of view, but this will change all different industries in all different ways. So I think, that's been the toughest part. And as we've talked about it, even within the company, it's really hard to be at this spot because you don't have all the answers, right? And some of this is like, you've got to try it out and you have to learn and you have to pivot and you have to keep going, which is really what retail is about all around, not just AI. Long way, I don't have the answer, but I think it's going to have to get there sometime soon if it can scale in a big way.
Other questions? Go ahead. So we have our own small business, not inside of your. My question is, you are looking for very diverse things, right? And you keep saying AI. I assume you have your own proprietary, and the functions are so different. Do you
Yep.
have different apps or different way, or you able to integrate those all together? And do you have any ideas for smaller businesses?
Yep.
Get the scale and
Yeah, so the question was based on the size of Abercrombie, how are the different, we'll call them apps, AI within the internal piece, are they proprietary or are we using third party? I'd say really for us, it's a mix of both. So about 2 years ago, we hired a chief technology and digital officer to really start pushing. We're not a tech company, right? We're an apparel company. But we have to be aware of all the tech that is going on because it feeds and it helps the total process. So right now we're using both. And the hard part, and I could see it being even harder from a small business standpoint, there are so many different iterations. And I know Josh will be able to talk more about this from just his point of view, but it's hard to understand what do I need to be able to apply to my business and what is the right third-party product to do that. So I'd say right now, the best use case is more just like, what are you trying to solve within your own business would be the way that I would take it if I was a small business. Because a lot of, and no disrespect to any third party people, but everyone's pushing a lot of like, I can solve this tomorrow, right? I can give you this product and this will create efficiency. I can give you this. And we're just not there yet, right? And these are all different models that are learning and they're going, and some are better than others. And as we're looking at it from a design standpoint, we trialed probably 5 or 6 different third-party pieces because each one did something different. And we had to figure out, okay, in the process that we work today, which one best aligns to that and what can give us the output. So I think what you've really got to understand and kind of start with from your point of view is what is the biggest problem I'm trying to solve? And I can guarantee there's an AI, opportunity out there for that. But I think it's harder if you just try to generally look at AI as a big piece and say, okay, it's all happening. What am I supposed to focus on? So that'd be the best advice to give you from my point of view. Yep. That it?
If not any students, but
Yeah.
speaking for our students, we are learning a lot of things here. We are learning a lot of softwares, but to stay competitive at the job market.
Yep.
I'm graduating, want to have a job right after graduation, say in ANF.
Yep.
In terms of AI, what do I need to learn now?
So the question was, obviously as a student, what do you need to learn about AI now so that you're prepared for the job market? I think the best answer to that is expose yourself to as much as you can to start to understand it, right? Because even from a company standpoint, we don't have it all figured out, right? I can't tell you, you learn this AI and you'll get a job, right? Because it's evolving and it's changing. So I think similar to any technology, right? You had to learn PowerPoint, Word, Excel, right? You have to just keep up with the way that the market is moving. And I think eventually it will just become so embedded in how we work that it will be a skill set that you will attain as you go through. But as of right now, there isn't one thing that, you know, as we're looking at hiring, as we're building out, it's like, you know, you have this program experience in AI. It will only benefit you, in my mind, just based on where we are in the market.
How do you go about training your employees to use AI? Is there programming that helps them do that online? Or do you have people that help them with that process, or are they on their own when they do that?
Yeah, so the question was, how do we go about training our own associates on AI? So the other Tyler that was supposed to make it here with me, who couldn't, who's actually my husband, we have the same name. I know it's a little weird. But, you know, what he's kind of leading AI for the company. And where that came from is he just liked it, right? A personal passion, he got into it. He was spending weekends just like creating stuff, right? And then he connected with Samir, who we hired, and he wanted him to lead it. So the way that he's doing it, right, from a design standpoint, I'll talk to, is he got really downloaded on the program directly from the third-party company that we're using. So we had an account, you know, specialist that worked with us on, okay, these are the things that we want to get out of it. How do we do that? Then as he started to like work through and find end use cases, he then rolled it out to the broader team. He's given multiple like speeches on this to just our own internal population, because similar to everyone else, everyone has the same questions and they're still trying to figure out how do I use it in my job? So a lot of it is just internal. We've been doing a lot of, you know, workshops. There'll be learning weeks like this that we'll do. And it allows people to ask questions, because that's been the biggest like unlock is from your point of view, from your department, from your job, what are you looking to use it for? And can it solve that? So I think that will be an ongoing thing and something that we'll continue to put more focus on just as this becomes bigger and the questions continue to come up. We'll want to make sure that the associates within have a great understanding of the tools that they're using.
I just have a follow-up.
Yeah.
I think it's great to hear that you were really concerned about not elimination of jobs, but efficiency, because I think from a consumer standpoint, when you know, choosing what brand to buy from, I think that's part of sustainability, you know, the people aspect. We don't want people to lose their jobs because of AI. So I think from a brand standpoint, that's really good from the customer. I think also from the employee standpoint.
Yep.
I don't want to get really good at this so that I can lose my job to AI. So I think that makes people more willing to engage with it within the company, because I feel like my job is going to get better. Like I will still have a job by learning how to do this. So I think that's a great.
Well, yeah, and I think like if I think about it from a lot of students' point of view, it's like, why am I going to school to learn all this to just be replaced with an AI, right? Like, and I think, you know, you have to look at it as a tool, and how are you building your own toolkit as a merchandiser, as a designer? And I think, you know, for us, especially at Abercrombie, the people are one of the biggest aspects of why the company is doing so well, right? Like we don't want to lose that creative component and the human component that AI is bringing, right? And that's why we've looked at it as a tool and not a replacement. Now that's speaking from one company, and then one company to the next, that could look very different. But I think the more you can involve and start to understand the end use cases and just get comfortable with using it, I think long-term, it'll be better for everyone. Sure.
So you talked about using AI for hindsight to make sure that you don't have the same stock, that's where you bought too much. Like, question in that, do you think there's ever going to be a future that there's AI integration between your information at A&F and your supplier? So they know when you're low, if they're the ones that are producing that piece, when you've met like X amount across your range, that they'll then start to produce again to just streamline that as opposed to waiting for a set time period. Do you think we'll ever get there? Do you want to get there? Or is that just like, no, because there's a way too many other things going on that's just ridiculous?
So the question was, will there ever be a point in time where there's AI in between the company and producing the garments or the vendor and who's using that? I'd say from my point of view, I wouldn't want that, right? And I'll tell you why. From a merchant standpoint, I want to have full control over the business. I want to be able to read the business on Monday and start to action things for Friday. So there may be some use cases where they're longer term items that are run on like a basic model and it's like, I just need more units, or if I'm a Walmart or, you know, some of these other large companies. But I think there will be AI shared between the two, right? So if we think about, you know, today, how our tech packs pass between a vendor and a tech designer, I think that's where we're more looking at it as of like, how do we create efficiencies there? And there's other technology that we're already using there, like Close a great example, right? Instead of sampling multiple times, like we can 3D render it and get an idea of like, is this going to lay out the way that we want it? Is this the right length? Before we'd even start any physical sampling. So there's different technologies that I think exist today, like in between that space, but I think there's a control aspect of the business that, and from my opinion, I wouldn't want to give up to just have automatic reorders or things on. But that's a very different use case for a different industry, so it could look different.
I don't know if there are other AI related questions. I just kind of wanted to ask some general agriculture related.
Yeah.
There are other AI questions anyone would like to offer?
Kelly, I'm gonna go back. I'm so blown away.
Yep.
It's so cool. It's so cool. Okay, I'm not- So, you-
Mm, yep.
Okay, right. So, obviously, do you think the better step for them would have been like to test out sharing that knowledge beforehand? Like that seems like obvious to me. Like you would have, you know, they've done this thing. Like I get the consumer's critique there. They're like, yeah, black people are fed.
Right.
Why am I
Right.
now AI? So like, I guess my question is for you, like in those, if you're thinking in the future about like potentially using this and then it being customer facing, like do you envision like doing some of those kinds of tests to mitigate some of that potential damage and trauma? I mean, really, for some people.
Right. So the question was basically about the Levi's example that I brought up, but you know, should there have been ways that they should have tested that prior to just going out into the market with that? I think a couple of things. I think one, we just have to understand the sensitivity around AI, right? There's always, at this point in stage, until people are more comfortable with it, there's going to be a point of view of negativity, which is, so if you start in that framework before you ever take anything customer facing, it's a good kind of like first pass. Like what could be seen if I'm going to go out and say this about AI and in our involvement in the company? I think, you know, I think from what they were trying to communicate, it was right, because I understand that, yes, I would love every single one of the sizes that I carry shot on all these different models, but we just physically can't do it when there's thousands of garments on the website at any given time. So I think what they were trying to get to was correct, but I think the messaging and then just the general fear from the public's point of view of not fully understanding it yet, is it probably just went, you know, south, and they probably didn't put enough thought into how is this going to be perceived and are we messaging the right thing? Because I don't think their intent was to use it for diversity purposes to, you know, check that off the list. Yep. Yeah, yep.
Not that you want to always mix diversity in PR, but it does happen.
Yeah.
And it's just,
And especially in this space, I mean, for a lot of these very large companies, right, it is very important that, you know, the message that's coming out is clear and you're not putting the company at risk and, you know, different things like that.
Okay, I'll throw my question out there. That's more general to Abercrombie, and just kind of tying together some of the concepts that you brought forth in your presentation, Tyler. So we know that it has to be, you know, solid data and information that goes in to yield, you know, quality results from AI, and AI, lots of efficiencies to be potentially gained. These are opportunities, but I also heard a lot of mention about your customer and the people. And when we talk about market research and knowing our customer, I mean, yes, this can help us start to maybe think about things we haven't thought about with our customer, but it doesn't replace knowing the customer, right? So, and just like, you know, with students, we're saying, okay, this can be an idea generator for a business plan or a research related topic. But it doesn't take the place of you personally writing the paper or the business plan, or so it's kind of the same thing, the analogy in a business context.
Yep.
So Abercrombie is really doing extremely well. And we've seen a lot of volatility in the retail marketplace. And so some firms, it's not always the case, some firms are
Yes.
faring really well and others are, you know, kind of plateauing and yet others struggle. So what would you say? And is it some of this people focus? Is it how you use the data? Is it, you know, your innovation and design? How's that all fit together? I know that was like a multi-pronged question.
Well, I can't give away the secrets. Maybe the PR team is on here now and listening to what I'm telling you guys, but yeah, I don't want it to lose my job. But I think, you know, the customer component is a big piece. So if anyone has just followed kind of what has happened with Abercrombie from the days of the past to where we are today, it was a lot of work and it was a lot of dialing into who are we going after from a customer standpoint and what are they wanting from us? What is happening in their life? You know, what are the end uses? That component of what we do and how we stay connected to that, which is true of any retail apparel company, is major component to having a successful business, because you have to not only talk to them like they understand what you're saying. Many times we're sitting in a room, you know, talking to each other and we're saying all these different terms, and then you get out in front of a customer and they have no clue what you're talking about, but it's like industry term. And, you know, so you've got to make sure you frame that up right. And you wouldn't have known that until you get out in front of them and start talking to them. So I think the customer component is huge. And I think that won't change even with any technology that gets invented, because there's nothing better than just face-to-face. Let me hear good news, bad news, you know, any feedback you have. Yeah, sometimes it's rough, right? Sometimes I've gotten some very tough feedback on like things that we've assorted, and it's like, but I want to hear it, right? Because that means I missed the mark somewhere. So I think that is a huge piece of what we do and how we drive the business, because it does feed all different touch points to whether it's marketing, product, the store experience, and how we're looking at that.
And if students are interested, what?
Just to dovetail on Dr. Neem's question, Tyler.
Yeah.
Take it from the customer and move it back into the brand. And tell me about how A&F is protecting the brand DNA, displaying the brand DNA in the A&I process, because I think the creative process is only as good as the brand walls that are built. Yep. And therefore, so for the customer is one thing, is it's great to be democratic in the whole thing, but on the brand side, it needs to be a little bit more policing too. And I wondered how A&I was helping.
Yeah, so the question was, how are we kind of policing from a brand standpoint while AI is being used within the company to make sure we're not losing sight of the brand, regardless of the customer facing. So there are hundreds of steps that I could list off, but really it all starts from how aligned is everyone in the company, from CEO all the way down. And, you know, from where ANF was to where we are today, our new CEO has been amazing at that, right? It's people first. It's, you know, she's not there to tell us how to do our jobs, right? We're there to tell her what's happening, and she's there to guide us. And that's been a huge component. So when you already have that type of alignment in a company structure, it makes it a lot easier to roll out some of these processes, right? Because, you know, we know how we're looking at, you know, different things as far as price, as far as customer perception of quality, all of these things that are built into the brand DNA. Everyone fully works within those constraints in their day-to-day job, whether they're touching AI or not. So, you know, we've come so far to be so aligned from the top down that that's created so much efficiency, and it allows everyone to do their individual jobs, but you never lose track of one piece of the brand DNA. I think that's been a huge piece as we've had to change the brand DNA and reshape what the brand was. That alignment has just sealed the deal as far as getting everybody to move in the same direction.
Just piggyback off the focusing on the customer You talked about customer immersions, focus groups, and closet raids. We have a trend forecasting course. What do you think we need to have in that course to prepare our students to be able to do those things, to gather the information about the customer?
Yeah, so the question was, what do we need to prepare students for from a trend forecasting standpoint? So I think, it used to be that like, okay, everybody just watch runway shows and whatever's happening on runway will eventually trickle its way down, which is still to some component the case. The social media component is probably the biggest thing that has changed. And as far as how fast trends are moving, what trends are relevant, because at any given time, there's hundreds of trends out there, but they're not all going to be relevant to the customer that we have. And that can send us down a path if we're trying to be, the next H&M, Zara speed model, like that's just not what the customer expects from us, and it'll miss the mark. So I think as far as social media as a component and just what are you taking away from that? And I think from influencers will always be influencer. Obviously that got huge and we'll see where it goes. But even just from like an outfitting component, and that's where I feel like we've gotten a lot of great feedback is just how are they wearing the clothes? Because that can help us see a little bit further of like, oh, this is important to them, or this end use is important to them. So again, kind of goes back to the customer of really understanding, where they are in life and what they're doing. But you've got to really be able to take multiple touch points to form it, right? We can't just look at TikTok is the only way to understand trend, or we can't just look at runway as the only way to stand trend. We've got to use what's happening in the business now, what we know of the customer, where we think the customer is going, and then how do we pressure test that as we go to make sure we're on track.
So it sounds like you do a lot of qualitative analysis to talking to customers to really understand what they're looking for. And I think we need to do more of that maybe with our students, is really more focus on focus groups and actually talking to customers to get that information and using that as part of the data.
Yeah, and because the business will drive a lot of it, right? That's the fastest way when people are voting with their dollars. That's the fastest way to understand if what you're doing is working. And I can sit at my desk all day long and read reports on top sellers, worst sellers, but I don't understand why, right? I can see how great it is. So we go out into stores a lot, and I'll meet with store managers and I'll have them walk me through the floor set, and I'll ask questions about, oh, this seems to be amazing. Are you getting any feedback on this, right? And that's the type of stuff that like I need to hear directly. And this isn't unique to us. Like, we did it at Fossil, we did it at Lands' End, and you need to hear directly from the customer why something's great or why it's not great, so that you can take that and fix it for the next season.
Do you think AI can help you anywhere there to find that data from customers?
It's a good question. So the question was, can AI help to get that data from the customers? At this point, I want to say no, solely for the fact that I think sometimes the customer doesn't always know what they want or what the problem is, right? And so a lot of it comes out naturally as you're just talking to them, and you can start to form your own opinion about why. They may not say it directly, but I have a hard time seeing how that data, like if someone came in and put it, like reviews might be the best way to say like, okay, someone's calling out that they don't like the feeling of this fabric, like review might be the best way for AI to like get it there. But the amount of valuable information of just an hour-long conversation with 15 or 20 people will, in my opinion right now, far outweigh what we could get from AI.
Can you do the student in the back?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned closet. What does a closet break look like when you consumer?
Yeah, so that is just like our term that we use. I mean, it sounds like a little aggressive, but it's not, I promise you. But it's really just to understand from the customer's perspective, what do they own in their closet? How are they shopping for things? Are there certain styles that they have that like maybe we don't carry? And again, it just allows us to get back to the customer and understand, how are they shopping? What are they looking at? What's relevant to them?
I noticed in the left corner of your presentation, it says nicely, discreetly confidential. is there any part, and I ask this for a selfish point of view, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Is there any part of your presentation that you could put on Canvas or put somewhere that we could refer back to? I work with the students on the FSF scholarship.
Okay.
Studies.
Yep.
And your presentation was excellent, and I think it would be a great source of research for us to incorporate into our work. So, if that's possible.
Yeah, I'd have to take that away with my legal and PR friends. I think what the concern is right now is like, this is so new. And from the total industry standpoint, the touch points that we are speaking about this need to be consistent, right? Obviously, I've shared all this with you. They've already seen all this, so they know what I'm talking about. But I'm sure we could do like an edited version that I could sell back and make sure that they're good with anything that I'd send over. But we could get to a good point, I bet.
Well, we would appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can take that away.
Me taking photos and pirating it. With that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tyler.
Yeah.
Get the appropriate.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So just as a last follow-up before we can have this great presentation. If any students are interested in internships or employment, I don't know if you have a last slide, if had any info, but what should they just go to? What's the short answer of what they should do?
You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great tool. That's probably the best way to reach out, but I'm happy to help. Obviously, this industry, is rather small. So as you move around from company to company, you cross paths a lot. I'm obviously always looking out for Iowa State people trying to build up. And truthfully, this is one of the best programs. I mean, I see it as I interview. The skill set that you start to build here, it will set you apart when you get out there. I think sitting in those seats, I was like, oh yeah, everyone, the school is great and we hear it, but it is real. And I think you should be proud of what you're getting to learn right now, because it does help when you get out into the industry.
Well, with that, thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Okay. So you want to tell us what our next page is here?
Okay, so real quick, we are going to take a 10-minute break. 10-minute break. So go ahead and go to the back, get a snack, refresh your drinks, and then we'll be back with Josh Street, CEO of Scoreboard Group. But right now,